I want to welcome you to our webinar tonight. My name is Tim Cole, and I work with Waypoint Church Partners, and we serve Christian churches and churches of Christ around the Mid-Atlantic region, states, and we try and help them get on mission and stay on mission. And we do that through training and coaching, consulting, and connecting. And so this would be kind of on the training side that every month we do a webinar in 55 minutes or less on ministry related topics. And it's really designed for lay leaders in the church that are really under-resourced. There's not a lot of stuff you can find online for your particular area of ministry. And so we cover topics for prayer team leaders, mission team leaders, elders, often children's and youth, leaders, volunteers, and what has now overtaken elders as our most popular topic is that of safety and security teams. And so we do that twice a year. And so tonight we're going to be talking specifically about training and what you can be covering in your training and what kind of rhythm you have for that and some of those topics for that. I do want to give our props to Mid-Atlantic Christian University, who's been the sponsor of our webinar platform since we began more than almost 6 years ago. And so we serve similar regions here in the Mid-Atlantic, obviously. So we're thankful for the ministry partnership that we have with them. If you are joining us for the first time tonight, you need to know that we've got a YouTube channel that you just search for Waypoint Church Partners. And we've got a YouTube channel with nearly all of the webinars that we've done over the last almost 6 years. And we've also organized those into playlists so that you can find the ones that are in your specific area of ministry. You can also kind of recommend a playlist to someone else in your church that's in a different area of ministry, whether it's your prayer team or maybe you need to start a prayer team. There's actually several webinars about starting and empowering a prayer team in your church. Or if it's your missions team or missions committee chairperson, there's playlists for that, particularly for elders as well. But there's also a playlist specifically for all the ones that we've done for safety and security. The one we did most recently was in February. It's the topic of that one was specifically about the medical team that you can have as part of your safety team at your church. And so Phil Murdoch, one of our church planters, but was also a lieutenant fire chief in his county and a FEMA guy, really shared with us just a really good plan on how you can put together a team that's prepared to handle medical emergencies at your church. So I want to invite you to go to our website and check that out. And then you can also check out the other webinars that are there as well. You can forward the links to those to friends of yours at your church or even other churches that might feel more equipped by watching those videos, whatever area of ministry they serve in. I also want to invite you to like and subscribe our YouTube channel over in the upper right-hand corner. You can do that and you kind of get notified when the next webinar gets posted. And so that if you hit the little bell on there, click the little bell, you'll get notified. For example, this one will be posted within the next 2-3 days. So we're thankful for our two panelists tonight, but we're afraid that one of them is having some audio difficulties. So our time might be shorter this evening than normal. I've got Richard Bell, who's with the Cornerstone Church in Chatham, Virginia. So it's a really strong mid-sized church in a small town. I don't know how big Chatham is. Maybe, is it 10,000? Maybe. That'd be pushing it. 5,000? Probably the biggest good church in the county. And then we were to have G.W. Maston from the Fairmount Christian Church in Mechanicsville outside of Richmond, Virginia. Both of them are great partnering churches with Waypoint, have been for a long time. Rick Raines is the pastor at Fairmount and is a former president of the Waypoint Board of Directors. And then our current president is Bob Paddock from the Cornerstone Church. And so both churches are very plugged into the ministry of Waypoint, great partners. And so unfortunately, we're going to reschedule GW, his Fairmount Church, which is a large church in a urban or, a large city. We're going to reschedule him due to the audio difficulties that we're having, to talk about working with your insurance company to make sure that your safety team is in compliance for what they want you to be doing to be fully covered with your liability policy, with your whichever insurance policy you have, whether it's Church Mutual or Brotherhood Mutual or one of the other insurance companies that are often used to insure your church. And so you need to be on the lookout for that webinar that'll be coming up with GW, and hopefully might get another panelist as well for that, since we're having a problem with his audio this evening. GW, you want to give one try to see if we got any audio? Otherwise, we will bring you back in 6 months.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, just about 10%. It's about the same as what it was. So that's unfortunately, he gets to be a spectator tonight. You guys can look forward to his webinar coming up. So Richard, we're going to transition over to you. Glad that you're joining us on the road tonight. You work with the Department of Homeland Security. Tell us, I'm curious about the story of the safety team at Cornerstone, kind of how it got started in the first place. Most churches did not have any kind of organized safety team before 10 years ago, maybe a few of them before that, but over the last 5 years in particular, most churches are trying to get up to speed, either getting started or developing their safety team. So tell us the story of how that happened at Cornerstone.
I can tell you how I got involved in it. We're relatively new to Cornerstone. Probably the last three years or so. We've been going. Had some in-laws that went there prior, so we've known Bob and a lot of the members of the church. They had started a very rudimentary, fundamental security team. A couple of them had attended some conferences and watched some YouTube videos and they had a little plan going. And I came there about 3 years ago and in talking with Pastor Bob and one of the elders, Dennis Tucker, they kind of talked to me about my background and asked if I would help them establish an actual security team with a larger force, more volunteers, and in keeping with tonight's topic of specifically training. It was prior to me getting there, it was a couple people that were, I'll help you out. What do you want me to do? And it was a very loose collective of volunteers that weren't all on the same page all the time.
Mm-hmm. And really, for a safety team, that's one of the critical areas, is that everybody's on the same page at the same time, that there's just a really healthy communication chain between everybody. So that's pretty critical. So could you describe for us what the Cornerstone safety team currently looks like? Like the webinar that I described from February was about medical personnel of varying degrees of expertise, but someone assigned for every service at the LifePoint Church. They got multiple services, but there's a place in the auditorium, that there's a person with a medical kit and other things around the building that everybody's aware of. But that's one area. Then you can have rovers or people in the auditorium. So tell us, kind of, if we were to come and check out Cornerstone and be privy to which people were on the safety team, who all would be accounted for on a typical Sunday morning.
So some of them you would easily spot because we wear vests that say safety or security. So we have the way we kind of designed our team. We have a couple different groups. We do have some roving patrols or posts that rove around. We have some fixed or static posts. We have some people that walk in the parking lot, kind of as we call them spotters or greeters. If they see something that's a little fishy, they'll radio it in to somebody else. In our mass gathering area, like our front lobby, the front foyer there of the church, where kind of people gather before they go into the sanctuary or whatever, mass gathering points. We do have some, we call them uniformed personnel, but they're wearing a vest or a blazer that says security. And then we have some unarmed members. We have armed members. We have some unarmed members that we may assign to somebody that we've identified as, okay, there might be something here with this person. They may be some type of threat actor. Nothing that's keyed us in enough that we need to, get this person off the property or whatever, but somebody we want somebody close to, and they'll usually sit near that person or be um, within arm's reach of that person. Just should, something come off, their job is to kind of slow them down until other people can get there. We
Mhm.
have several of us, a lot of our team, especially the leadership of the security team, are either current or prior law enforcement. All of us are at least CPR, basic first aid, and AED certified. And several of us, myself and the two team leaders, so we do the same thing. We have multiple services, so we have a team that works each service. So we do, Cornerstone, we do serve one, attend one is kind of the motto we give to people. So we all have some type of first aid bag or like an IFAC individual first aid kit or something like that. That's on. I have one I carry with me. Both team leaders have one, and we'll switch off during the services. We have some static posts where people stand, like where um, I call it the Kingdom Kids hallway, where our children's church and stuff happens. We have at least one armed officer back in that. The classroom area are near the double doors there to kind of monitor that area for a little more safety for the kids. And we always have at least two armed individuals in the sanctuary as well during every service.
Okay. So, so all told, it sounds like it's maybe 7 or 8 people per service. Is that about right? Maybe even more?
Usually about 12. We have about
Oh, really?
eight. We have 6 static posts or where we put them at different doors. The two in the sanctuary, and then the team leader um, and a rover that patrols the grounds and checks the doors in the parking lot. So
All right.
12 if everybody shows up on their volunteer Sunday.
All right. Well, that gives us the scope of what a fully formed team could look like. That's really helpful. I know that I was working with a church 3 or 4 years ago, and they really upped the ante. And I may have said this on a former webinar, but they put someone in a car kind of up on the hill just to watch the parking lot, and then someone called the police because there was a creepy guy watching everybody in this car up on the hillside.
Yeah.
And so you got to be careful with your people that are not not obviously uniformed, that people don't call them in, but at least they were making sure, because when you go to any other training or webinar, you discover that if you can get some kind of sense of somebody that doesn't look right or smell right before they enter the building,
Yes, sir.
that's your best opportunity to stop something, is before they get in the building. And so most churches think that safety and security starts once someone enters the building, and now our team is ready to check things out. But any and all of your greeting team, that man, if it doesn't feel right, say something. If somebody walks in the building and for some reason you just your God-given intuition says that guy's not right, it's better to say something to somebody than just hope that everything's okay.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
So a team could have up to 12 people, some static, some roving. Definitely some in the kids area. There was a webinar we did that you'll see in the playlist, with a person who works for a child safety uh, company that helps churches, particularly the company does the whole thing, but his area was just teaching and training churches to have a safe children's area. And it was right after there was a a boy that was abducted from a church in the Lexington area.
Oh,
But coincidentally, we had scheduled the webinar way in advance, and then like the week before our child safety webinar, that happened. Right here in Virginia, and so it was very timely to say, hey, there's some basic things that you can do to train your people to be on the lookout for the wrong kind of people. And so that's what your team looks like. So if you got 2 services, that means you've got at least 24 people. But do you have like a whole nother rotation where you've got 36 or 48, or is it pretty much the 24 are trying to rotate among themselves every week?
I think we have approximately 36 members on the security team. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we usually will have about the 12 to or 24, 12 per service, 24 per Sunday. Um, And then we have some alternates, if we need, they'll check in with either me or the team leader, and hey, do you need me today? And if we have something, maybe we've had some threat or something we've identified or something we're keeping an eye. Yeah, we actually could use some more bodies today. Or no, if you want to go into the service or attend the service, thanks for volunteering. Or sometimes, somebody else will be like, well, hey, my family's here. Can you take this one for me and I'll attend the service, and we swap
Yeah.
out. So we do keep a few kind of in reserve in case, once we have all the posts filled, if the need arises for additional people.
Yeah, that's pretty healthy. Depending on um, which software your church uses, a lot of them, if you use Planning Center, for example, that volunteer teams are able to schedule themselves and their substitutes on the Planning Center app, and so helps take care of that where the preacher isn't getting called on Saturday night at 10 looking for someone's looking for a substitute. My wife was a children's minister for years, and man, if the phone rang after 6 p.m. on Saturday night, it was bad news because somebody was ditching Sunday morning. And so now Planning Center or whichever app you got hopefully can help with that.
We have
Well,
sorry, I was
go
gonna say
ahead.
we have an app on our church website, and our church the church app that our security team has their own channel on it, and you have to be added by either me or the pastor to it, and that's kind of what we use to, if I'm not going to make it, like this weekend, unfortunately, I got to be out of town for work, so I'll go on there and remind the other two team leaders the night before that I'm going to be out, I'm going to be unavailable.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Richard, tell us just briefly, if you got a long resume, but tell us briefly your personal involvement in safety and security, but with a view towards there's a broad range of people who serve in this area, even lead in this area, but yours is pretty robust.
Well, I got out of the Army and so I started working with the sheriff's office. And there with our schedule, I did some part-time work in security. Did a lot of Section 8 housing security and stuff, and then I left there and went to the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Worked there for a little bit, and then I got on with Homeland Security about 9 years ago, and that really kind of drove my security um, field forward. Our first job title with the Department of Homeland Security Federal Protective Service was a physical security specialist. So really taught me about physical security. So like you were talking about earlier, keeping threats outside before they get in, how to detect, observe, and deter stuff prior to it getting inside a facility. And then that kind of got me in towards with the law enforcement and the physical security into this. That's what I did my degree in security management, and started doing a lot of training. I'm a trainer with several things with Homeland, with my organization, and so I started getting some professional certifications on the outside, either through the American Society of Industrial Security or firearm stuff, NRA, or United States Concealed Carry Association, and some other organizations like that, to kind of segue into the personal security or personal protection realm.
All right. Well, yeah, that's a broad range, and so we're glad that you've got us. We've got you on tonight, and we'll get to hear GW's background when we get to have him on our next webinar. But let's dive into the training. We've done a bunch of topics. I think eight webinars to date, at least, for safety and security teams with different topics. But really, never we talked specifically about. So, if I'm going to have a team, what should training look like ideally? And a lot of teams that are getting together, they're just finding people and kind of saying, okay, who got what, but to have some kind of plan and rhythm for training, I think you could really help us with your background. I'm curious what that looks like at Cornerstone, as far as, well, from maybe a two-part question.
Okay.
One would be initial training for a new team member. What do you have to do to bring them up to speed? And then ongoing training for all of your members, team members, just because they've been trained 5 years ago doesn't mean everybody's on the same page today. So what do you do as far as keeping the team healthy over time?
Well, to address the first one, new team members, we have, it's probably about 24 hours. We usually do it on 3 different weekends of training that we put them through, and the training is um, everything we want our security person to do. So we do a lot of um, signs of potential violence, signs of concealed carry or weapons carry, tactical approaching, how to walk up to somebody, how to talk to somebody, um, all the way up through the kind of full gamut of active shooter response training. So
Hmm.
we kind of start at, hey, we're at the door. What are we looking for? What are we looking at? Looks out of place, bags, suspicious clothes, any of that. And then we work it all the way up to everything else we've done has failed, and there's some threat actor in the building, and what is our response? And we do anywhere from 2 to 4 person response training to going to an active shooter. So that's kind of the whole spectrum that we run them through. Uh,
All right.
Recurring training, I do quarterly. We have quarterly training, and the topics will vary. We try to mix it up so that people don't feel like they're getting the same thing, every day. But we will do keep that a little shorter. We usually do that about 4 hours, and we'll meet and we'll go over certain things, especially if there's something like a recent example is somebody that's not really I think you and I were talking about it on the phone the other day. Not really maybe a physical threat, but maybe some type of spiritual threat. That's the phone call that Pastor Bob had me with where he had a different kind of threat to the church, and how would we as security respond to that? How do we talk to people? How do we talk with somebody that might be in some type of mental health crisis as opposed to actually a threat actor? What we'll do. I'm a big fan of scenario based training. Um, so we'll set up little scenarios and have them kind of role play their way through it, and then talk about it. From a outside appearance looking in, what could we have done better? What clues did you miss? What else could we pick up on? All the way to firearms training. We'll go out to the range and conduct some firearm drills and stuff like that.
Okay. So you said 4 hours. Is this like a Saturday morning?
Usually we'll do a Saturday morning or Saturday evening. I'll usually send out an email. Hey, it's coming up that time of year again. When would people not be available? Or
Mhm.
we'll try to pick the day that we can get the most people, and what time can we get? Um, and it's hard because they're volunteers. You can't. Well, hey, you need to be here. You have to be here. So it's we just kind of stress the importance of all of us being on the same page, the importance of what we're doing, and pick a date that works for everybody, or at least the majority of the people, and then a time frame the same. We've done some, Saturday evening because some people had some stuff going on Saturday morning, or
Mhm.
um, something like that. But usually, typically, it's a Saturday morning, and then um, I'll provide lunch, or me and the team leaders will get together and we'll get everybody's lunch or whatever, and have a little training that morning or something.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you shared kind of the scope of all the things you can cover. I think when a lot of people start thinking about conceiving of a safety or security team, they're thinking first about active shooter, which is really the last thing on the line of what you don't hope for. You hope never happens, but it's the last on the list. We did a webinar maybe a year ago. I don't know. I'll have to look back, but the art of de-escalation. How
Uh-huh.
you just kind of talk to someone down from being agitated, and a lot of disturbers aren't carrying necessarily. They're just active disturbers. And how do you, number one, and so I'm curious how you would train Richard, someone that's just verbally disturbing the auditorium. How would you train your team to react in that situation?
So what we've done is we'll have two or three of the team members approach and try to get that person out of the sanctuary to step out in the hall or step out in the foyer to talk to us, and try to get them away from the congregation or whatever, out and talk. And then a lot of that is just going to be like you said earlier, just talking.
Mhm.
If they're not a threat, they're not trying to hurt themselves or others, we're going to give them a venue. Maybe it's out in that little foyer or corridor. Maybe it's in our little next step room or little prayer room where they can vent to me for the whole duration of the service or whatever, and give them a means to talk without disrupting everybody else.
Yeah. That was the first time I saw the need for a safety team or a security team was And actually, it's fascinating. It was 30 years ago. I was a resident at a very large church, almost 30. I don't think 30 years ago. But there was a disturbance in Christmas Eve service. Someone got up and was yelling and screaming at the preacher, and they were up in the balcony. A large church, so it's a large balcony. But I think within 10 seconds, there were people around the gal, and they had her out into the hallway that I didn't know existed, And so I thought, wow, I had no idea that they'd thought that far ahead. And but now we're seeing that that's not just happening at the largest churches. Have you guys had any kind of incidents of disturbance at Cornerstone in the 3 years that you've been there?
Not to that effect. Nobody just standing up in the service and yelling or screaming. We've had some threats called into the pastor in the church. Couple was going through a divorce, and she had came back into the church and had met another young man at church who was recently divorced, and the husband was blaming the church for it. So he had made some threats, and because she was attending, he had made a comment that he knew where her and his kids would be every Sunday if he wanted to get them. So we had that going on for a little while. Then we have some of your little standard stuff, but nobody stood up or made a scene. I think the most recent thing we had was after church. We had a individual. We're not really sure what their purpose in coming to church is, because it doesn't seem to be to worship or anything, but they broke out some tarot cards at the end and were wanting to do some tarot card readings for some of the youth in the church, and they had to be told that this isn't the place for that. But that's the closest thing to a disturbance we've had, and it was right after the service.
Yeah. And so I'm curious on that one. I don't think most people understand that the church is not public property; it's a private property, and so you can say you can't be here. Is that right?
Yes, sir. And that's what we did.
Kind of a public venue. Most people think it's open to anybody, but really it's not.
It's private property, and that's one of the first things we did with the security team was put together like a standard operating procedure, and I got it to the elders and the pastor and said, this is what we would like to do, but the pastor is the leader of the church, so it needs your blessing. If you want us to remove somebody from the church, I said, it's different. That's God's house. It's not my house. I'll throw somebody out of my house, but I can't throw somebody out of God's house. So that decision is made by the leadership and the elders, not necessarily by the security team, unless it's some type of physical threat that needs to be immediately removed. And
but it seems like it's the best picture of a shepherd taking care of the sheep. From a biblical perspective, if there's a threat to the flock physically of a wolf coming in, what a great opportunity there are for volunteers in your church to serve in that role. And I love the new wave or the of safety and security teams that there are in churches, because it gives people a whole new place to volunteer in the church that didn't exist more than a decade ago, practically speaking. And some people that have great skill set, great experience, like in whether it's law enforcement or in the medical field or whatever, they can actually use their experience to serve the body of Christ. And so that's great. I'm curious. I've got a couple questions for you. Number one, a lot of people thinking 24 hours of training for someone coming on the team, 8 hours 3 times, or however you break that up, 6 hours 4 times. They may not be prepared to do that. What would you recommend to a church that wants to train well before they get deputized, basically, to represent the safety teams, represent the church as part of the safety team? Are there other groups locally that should be able to help train? I know that there's some churches, I think, have invited the local sheriff to come and do some of the training, and typically they're pretty willing to do that. What would be the case there in the county where you serve?
It's the same in our county. Pennsylvania County Sheriff's Office will come out. They'll help out. Usually their training is going to be geared towards an active shooter response. But they'll come out and help. There's other organizations that you can sign up, and some of them cost or do it as a ministry or whatever, that can come out and help train. We did 24 hours for us because the vast majority of the staff was either prior law enforcement or current law enforcement. So they were bringing in years, decades, or multiple hours of training and experience. So we did kind of 24 uh, hours of that, just to kind of gear specifically towards what the church wanted from us, and what our role within the church ministry was. I say if we're training somebody up, and they need more beyond what we gave them, then they'll always be partnered with a senior team member for a good bit of like on the job training while we're on, while you and I may be working this kids check-in area together. So as the senior person, you're telling me, you're quizzing me, kind of, hey, what are you looking for here? What'd you notice on that guy? What did you see here? Is any what do you, and kind of some on the job as we go training, and then the continuing training. We also offer. I'm a Virginia State Department of Criminal Justice certified instructor for armed security and unarmed security through the state. So I offer that to any of the team members for free if they want to get it. And they can actually be certified in armed or unarmed security through the state of Virginia.
Wow,
if
that's
they
great.
want to do that as well. So
Now I'm curious, on the medical side, I talked about the webinar we did last about, the medical team part of your safety team. What do you guys do as far as training and then positioning medical in your particular? Every building's different, so it's going to look a little bit different every building. But what do you guys do as far as your medical team, medical side of the team?
we have so if you've ever been to Cornerstone, we got two floors there. There's downstairs and the upstairs where the main sanctuary is. We have two huge medic bags, and there we've got one of the guys on the team's a retired Pennsylvania County Sheriff's deputy. He's also a current EMT and an EMT instructor. So he put our medic bags together. There's one downstairs, one upstairs, and there's an AED downstairs, an AED on the hall, centrally located on the hallway upstairs, and then several of us that are EMT certified have the little individual medic kits that we carry with us for some quick first aid if we need. Our last training event was actually medical, and we did a whole stop the bleed course, and I brought in a bunch of tourniquets, and we practiced tourniquet applications, and everything from putting a Band-Aid on this little cut all the way up to some severe injury, gunshot, or some type of laceration from working at the church or whatever to putting tourniquets on. And that was our last training that we had.
Yeah, that's great training. So I'm curious, that's for the whole team. Do you provide like an annual CPR class, or do you have people go to one at the community college? What do y'all do about that?
We provide it. So I'm a CPR first aid instructor, and I'm an emergency first aid instructor, first aid fundamentals instructor. So in fact, I think it's coming up. I think it's coming up in October, November. We'll have our CPR first aid refresher training, and we'll they'll come in. We'll run through all of the new CPR stuff and practice on the little CPR dummies and renew everybody's cards.
Yeah, that's great. Now, do you open that up? I'm curious. Do you open that up to other people in the church that might be interested in being refreshed, or is it just for your safety team?
So what I do is anything that I'm offering. The church is pretty good about it. They'll throw it out to members of the public, or members of the church, and any training that I'm offering, I do for the safety security team or church leadership for free. I don't charge them for anything, because once again, I want these people trained as best as I can get them, because my family's in that church too. So if it's for the church, we usually do, if they're not part of the safety security team, I'll do a 50% discount on any whatever the normal fee is for it. It's half price for anybody else in the church. And if it's anybody in the community, we'll just charge the fee if they want to come out and get CPR first aid certified or whatever. We do that with our.
Yeah. So how many hours is refresher for CPR versus you got a team member? They really need, it's their first time being certified or first time in a long time, so they need to go all the way back. How many hours new
The
versus refresher?
refresher is 4 hours, I believe, and the initial class is, I'd have to look on I haven't done an initial class in a while. Everybody's been refresher. Um,
Yeah.
I
Roughly.
want to say it's eight to 16 if you're doing first aid with it. I think
Mhm.
it's 8 hours of CPR and AED, and then like 8 hours or 4 hours of first aid, something like that for
Yeah.
the initial
All right.
class.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but of all the uh, incidents that you can have at church, a medical incident is the most likely thing to happen.
That's every
And
Sunday.
usually, yeah, and typically we're thinking about firearms and active shooters or whatever. It's like, no, someone having a medical emergency is way, way more likely. And so to train your people well on that side, not that you don't want to train on the other side to be fully prepared for something horrible, but the odds, just statistically speaking, are so much higher to be prepared for any kind of medical situation that might occur.
Yes, sir. And then if you're trained for that, that's more likely going to occur. But then if the worst does occur, it's also going to cause this medical stuff to be a necessity as well. So you're basically double dipping with one set of training, and you're getting
Yeah.
a skill set that'll help you with both situations.
Well, I will interject here, and that we've got a few minutes that if you have some questions for Richard, there's a Q&A button, not the chat button, but the Q&A button that you could hit, and I could kind of moderate any questions that would work for the whole group here that's meeting us tonight. It's one of the advantages of joining live is you get to ask the presenter and panelist questions live versus watching this on YouTube after the fact. Um, so if you got a question, hit the Q&A button, and we'll see if we can answer that. But what was I going to say that the medical side, that Waypoint offers a service to come, um, what's called a strategic facility evaluation. And it's really not necessarily with safety and security as the primary focus, but we'll come in during the week and kind of walk around your building and generate typically like a 24 page report on how you could best use your most expensive ministry tool, which is your facility. But one of the parts of that report is just things that we'll see for safety and security. Unsecured knives in the kitchen is the one thing I look for every time, because when I was a kid, my brother and me and my two cousins were like 5, and we were running around after church. And my cousin, to remain nameless, got a knife out, cut his thumb real deep, then went walking around the church looking for his mom, leaving this big old trail
Ugh.
behind him. And it's like ingrained in my memory. But now at every church, I say, you've got this whole drawer full of knives or chemicals underneath the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
And so if you need someone to come by and look, there's people locally that'll do it for you, but Waypoint would love to come by and talk about all the different ways about first impressions, and about safety and security and other things that we could say, hey, here's some suggestions on how you could best use your facility as what you use as your primary tool every week. But some training on the medical side is so important. Now, Richard, I'm curious what kind of training you do, if any, about, and I don't even know the correct term for it, but a misplaced child, a lost child, kind of locked down, find a child. What do you guys do about that? I don't think a lot of churches think about that, to have a ready response
So
when
we
all of a sudden mom goes after church and her son's not in his classroom. Now what?
well, we have that in our occupant emergency plan that we put together, and it's uh, I just labeled it the same thing the federal government labels it, a Code Adam. That was the Adam Walsh Act and all was part of that, so we call it Code Adam. Somebody's missing a kid. So we basically our policy is that we're going to lock the church down. Nobody's leaving. Everybody's kind of staying there. Everybody's looking for the kid, and then we train the security team members at the doors to check. So we have the kid check-in kiosk, and it prints off a guardian label and a child label. So the people working the kid check-in or check when somebody goes down that hallway, do you have a guardian label or a um, volunteer pass? So the church has volunteer lanyards for people that are working back there. And then if they come out, does your kid and your your kid and your guardian labels, the kid's label and guardian label, are they matching up? And then we also train, Cornerstone's been great with it, because we're actually we're in the process of putting together some training videos for the volunteer staff working with the kids to check those IDs before they release a kid, and then stuff to look for on the kids' clothing. We always train in law enforcement to make note of the kids' shoes, because most abductors might bring a coat or a change of clothes or a blanket to throw over or something, but nobody ever brings another pair of shoes. So when the parents are given a description or whatever, make sure we note the shoes. What shoes are we looking for? That's what's in our policies. We're going to secure every exit, and then we have our search and roving teams and additional personnel that we pull in to start searching the church and the grounds to see what we can find, and prompt almost immediate notification of the sheriff's office as well of the missing child.
What kind of radios do you guys have to be able to communicate quickly? How many of the 12 have a radio to where if there's a kid that's lost, how many of the
Everybody has a radio on the security team, and we also put a radio in each one of the student classrooms. The classrooms are on channel 2. The security team's on channel 1. So if anybody in the classroom has an issue, medical issue or whatever, the team leader, he gets to be the lucky one who carries 2 radios, because our radios don't have scan function. So he carries one on channel 2 and one on channel 1. So if somebody in the back has a issue or concern, medical or security issue or whatever, they can call the team leader, and then he can kind of be our dispatch element and send somebody to check it out. So everybody has the radios, and including the teachers in the classroom.
All right. Well, that's great. That's a tidbit about having the teachers. They don't have to run out of the classroom to find one of your team, but they can contact immediately, and then everybody's on the same page that we're looking for a child of this age, male or female, and so on. That's huge. That's great. Great coordination in your training for that.
And having the radios in the classroom helps us too. If we have to initiate a lockdown, for an active shooter or whatever, we don't have to send a team member to each classroom to knock on the door. We can just call in on the classroom, and we have our lockdown procedure, so we can just say, hey, lockdown, and the teachers know what to do.
You know what kind of orientation the children's teachers are given in the children's ministry training to coordinate with that, or do they come into yours?
That's what we've had some come into ours. And that's one of the things we have some overlap in our volunteers. I'll have a lot of the one spouse will be a classroom volunteer, and the other spouse will be on the security team. So they'll both come to the security training, which I'm all fine for, because more eyes are better than less eyes. But we're actually working with our youth minister and our children's minister, and we're trying to put together some training videos on the Cornerstone website. So when she gets new volunteers that, hey, I'd like to help out in the nursery, she can give them the link and they can go watch it. I put together a safety binder in each classroom that has, like step-by-step lockdown procedures for an active shooter, radio procedures, the nearest emergency exit, stuff like that. Just some quick reference for people there. They're supposed to, when they start volunteering, they're supposed to get a copy of all that and be able to review it and all prior to volunteering, while we're doing their background check and all that. We tell them while we're checking you out, we're going to give you a little bit of homework to do that you can have done when everything comes back before we can put you to work. But we're trying to get a little series of videos to kind of show them training. We've got a lot of current teachers, middle school, high school, elementary school teachers that are volunteering. So they deal with these active shooter lockdowns every year at school. So kind of putting them to work, helping me develop some stuff to better teach the Sunday school teachers how to function in that capacity as well.
Yeah, that's great that you got people there. And again, for people that are starting a team or don't have the breadth of experience that you've got, there are organizations out there that can help you get equipped. Like a friend of mine who interestingly left a fairly large church to work for this church child safety team. You know, that's what they do for a living, is train churches on that. More on the children's ministry side than the safety side, really. But don't feel like you're alone or that you're overwhelmed and you can't figure it all out. That there are people out there that are willing to help you get up to speed. This is an area where everybody helps everybody because it's about protecting people, you know, and so everybody's very helpful. It seems like. Well, that's about all the questions I had for you. That's a ton of questions and a lot of help for us. Have you ever had to remove a team member just for any particular reason that they didn't get up to speed, or their attitude was not quite right as far as their position on the team? Or I'm curious on that side of not training, not on the training side, but removing someone and to no longer be trained.
We haven't had that yet.
All right.
Brad, we do have a couple people that express some desire to be on the security team, and you know, everybody goes through a background check. I had to do it, and I've had some of the elders that were more familiar with this young man came to me and were like, "Hey, we got some concerns about him. His you know, mental health or whatever is not quite right." So we didn't remove him from the team because he wants to help out and volunteer. We just he's not going to be, he doesn't carry a firearm. He's not, you know, one of the armed team members or one of the responding team members. But you know, my thing, I said, I won't turn away any volunteer. I can give you a door to watch, and you know, you give him something, a task, a job, and you know, don't make it seem like it's a menial task that we don't need, you know, but give him a purpose and something he can do to help out the team, and then let some of the other team members know, hey, look, you know, he wants to help out. There's some issues with him, so you know, he's watching this for us, but we're watching him while we're watching everybody else too.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I think I didn't say before, but the idea of not just, you know, regular quarterly training, but that you're shadowing, that the on the job training is some of the best stuff, where you get to talk through it with someone that's been around. And I'm not sure if most churches have that as part of their training regimen, is some kind of season of shadowing or apprenticing. I think someone can go through all the classes, but the mentor is going to know really quickly whether this person knows what they're talking about in probably one Sunday, to know kind of where they fit on the readiness scale compared to just attending your training. And so that's a big part of the training process that you guys are including. And so that's great. Well, Richard, thank you for your time and for your willingness to share with other churches about how they can start training now that they're trying to figure out how to have a team. Now, what do we do is how do we train them, and how often do we train them? What are all the different areas that people need to be trained on? And of course, you're offering CPR, but if there's not someone certified at your church to train on CPR, there is someone in your community, you know, whether it's the Red Cross or elsewhere. That's what it used to be when I was a lifeguard back in the day. But there's somebody that will be happy to come in and train your team annually on CPR and other areas. And so don't feel like you're alone. Don't feel like you can't get it all done. Part of the deal is, even if you can't do it all, doing all you can is better than not doing something. And so getting started with the team and then letting it evolve and develop over time is huge. Yeah. So your tips for us tonight are huge to help people take a step forward. I'm thinking, okay, I can kind of see what a fully formed team would look like. I think we can get there over time. And then our time's about up. And so George, GW, sorry that we had technical difficulties tonight, but we're going to talk about some of that in our next session with you, about your experience switching insurance companies and trying to figure out how do you fully comply with what they're going to cover and not cover based on how your team is trained and equipped. And I don't think most churches take the time to look and even compare or ask their insurance company, you know, how we're covered. And so that's going to be a fascinating conversation that we're going to have with you next time. Let me share the screen really quickly, tell you about a couple more things about Waypoint. We have a webinar, a couple more events coming up soon. We've got a webinar tomorrow afternoon, a pop-up webinar about AI, artificial intelligence, This is more for staff, church staff. Should we use it even? And if so, how in the world will we do that? And so that's a pop-up webinar is not timed like this one. It may only be 30 minutes, but to have a friend of mine who's in the mix on that. Our next live event is an elder training that we've got in Kingsport, Tennessee, with the guys from E2 Elders. And of course, we always want to give props to our sponsor, Mid-Atlantic Christian University. But tonight, we're thankful for the input that we've gotten from Richard, because I mean, literally, you're protecting the flock. I mean, there's no other way to put it, of thinking about sheep in a pen, and a wolf comes in. Your job is to protect those sheep. And so I'm thankful for what your team is doing there at Cornerstone, but more for the way that you're willing to share and help other people do the same. So thanks for your time tonight, Richard. And if you're willing, Richard, well, they can email me. But if people have questions after the fact, even on a webinar on demand later, if they wanted to ask you some questions, we can forward your email to them that we may not be able to answer ourselves. All right.
Certainly. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we hope to have you on a future webinar about safety and security, but also to have you invite the friends at your church that are in other areas of ministry to join our webinars that happen every month. It's usually the middle Monday of the month, the teens of the particular month that webinar will be live. So have a great evening, and keep your people safe. Have a good night.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Y'all have a good one.